In this video, we're going to do the opposite of the product rule, which is the quotient rule. So instead of multiplying, we're going to be dividing. All right, so quotient is when you're dividing, so the quotient rule is when you're taking the derivative of functions being divided. All right, so here's what the quotient rule looks like. It's more complicated than the product rule. You think just because multiplication and division are opposite each other, the formulas would be a little bit different or be similar, but they're actually quite different. All right, there is some similarities in that the fact that you have this thing again where you have the original function and its derivative up here, the other original function and its derivative. All right, this one is not a typo. This is supposed to be a minus sign. And since there's a minus sign in the formula, getting the order right is important, because if you accidentally switch these two pieces, then your answer is going to be wrong by a negative. So we have to make sure that we actually have the order memorized. All right, another common thing that gives students some trouble is down here. Even though we're doing all this derivative stuff, this is the original function g on the bottom. So we just take the original function g and square it. All right, so this is the formula. Again, right now, you're going to have to just write it in your notes and we'll use it. All right, the way that I learned in high school to remember this is that we have a low function. So low means bottom. And we have a high function, which is the top. So when we take the derivative of a high over low function, this derivative, we keep the low function, so low. We take the derivative, so the d means the derivative of the high function. This is low d high minus the original high function minus the derivative of the low function, so high d low. And on the bottom, we get that bottom function squared. Well, if it's low, squared means you have two lows, which is low low. All right, so low d high minus high d low over low low is kind of a fun way of saying the quotient rule. It also kind of helps you remember the order each time. All right, so here we're going to take the derivative of this using the quotient rule. All right, so first we do low d high. So we keep the low function the same. So I'm just going to put 4x plus 3. And we're going to multiply that by the derivative of the top function, the high function. That's going to be 10x. All right, then we subtract. Now we do high d low, so we keep the original high function. And multiply that by the derivative of the low function, which is 4. And all that's over the original low function being squared. And right now, we're just getting used to this formula, so we'll leave it there. Generally, you would simplify this top by distributing out and combining like terms. But right now, just figuring out what the formula, the quotient rule is saying, this is fine to stop right there. Another quotient, again, whenever you see this division bar of something that you're taking the derivative of, you have to do the quotient rule. So we keep low the same, times the derivative of the top. Derivative of the top is e to the x plus 1. Then we subtract, and we keep the original top, times the derivative of the bottom, which is going to be negative sign. So I'm just going to put the sign here, and that negative is going to jump out here and make that a positive. Oh, the original bottom squared. And again, generally in the AP exam and stuff, they would probably take these e to the x's and factor them out and stuff like that. Right, but for right now, this is fine. We have all the pieces that come from the quotient rule. All right, here's another one. You can try on your own first. I pause the video, try it on your own, see if you get the same thing that I get once we go over it. All right, so we're going to have low d high minus high d low all over low low, which is that squared. Again, there's some simplifying you could do here. Again, right now, this is fine. Just figuring out the different pieces. All right, bottom function stays, and then its derivative, and then it stays, and it's squared. All right, the derivative of the top function, the same original function. And those are the pieces of the quotient rule to help you to take the derivative of these types of functions. right, so in class, we're just going to do a bunch of practice. I'm remembering that we can do the product rule whenever we're multiplying. We can do the quotient rule whenever we're dividing. And then also remembering that there's some tricks we learned earlier. Like this looks like a quotient rule problem if you had to do this. You could do this using the quotient rule. It's going to be more effort than if you just rewrite this as x to the -2 and use the power rule. So things like that, remembering that we can use the power rule still sometimes, or other derivative rules, but trying to use these rules and make sure we have the patterns memorized. We're also going to use these new rules to figure out the derivatives of more trig functions. So right now we kind of just know sine and cosine. What about tangent and the other ones? And then we're going to do some AP questions, all right, just to kind of see what you would be expected to know on the AP test about these product and quotient rules. All right, so that's what we're going to do. I look over these examples and then come to class with any questions that you have.